Well, I told y'all at the beginning of this is probably going to be the hardest thing you had to do, and that it was going to be a lot of fantastic stuff, and a lot of gory things, and a lot of gross things, and a lot of things that are probably outside of our normal life experiences. Mostly outside of my life experiences, and I'm making assumptions that most of this stuff is probably outside of yours too. So what I'd like to do is go through the evidence and take a look at what the state's case is and see if we can't separate out the disgusting nature of all of it from the facts that are supposed to lead you to a conclusion. And that's really what you're here to do. And so when I told you at the beginning that this was an intellectual exercise and not an emotional exercise, I meant it. You have to be able to separate out the ridiculousness of this case. I don't really know any other way to say it. I mean, this is a horrible case. Like I said, there's a reason why there's interest in this outside of Anderson County. You hear body in the freezer, and it's about all you need to hear, right? And people want to hold people accountable for that kind of thing. And so, but it's important that we determine what the elements are, and this is where we're talking about an intellectual exercise versus an emotional exercise. Is just because it's outrageous, just because it seems like anybody involved with this should be hung by their toes, and maybe that's what you feel like. But that's not the law, and that's not what we're here to do. We're asking you to do something much more difficult than that. We're asking you not to jump to conclusions. We're asking you to actually look at what came in through the witness stand and through the evidence, and what does it tell you? Because the state does have to prove each and every element of these crimes to you beyond a reasonable doubt. Each and every element. That means even if there's 4 elements and 3 of those elements are satisfied, but there's one that's not proven beyond a reasonable doubt, that's not guilty. Does everybody understand that? I'm not supposed to, you can't answer me, but so what I want to do is just talk about who we have involved, okay? And we start with Rebecca Dishman. All right. What do we know about Rebecca Dishman from the witnesses? What do we know about her before she met Sean? We know that she had trouble staying in homes. She would live with multiple different places, and she kept getting kicked out of wherever she lived, and people would wash their hands of her. She testified to that. She never testified about being homeless or anything like that, so she obviously has a skill at being able to find a place to live. She hadn't worked in some time, although she did have a job as a CNA, right? So we know one thing, she moved around a lot. And what's more important about that is that she's kicked out of every place she lives. And if you've ever had anybody that's living with you, or if you've ever had relatives, or you know anybody that does these kind of things, people don't kick sweet, simple girls out of their house. People kick people out of their house because they're a danger or a threat to something in their home, either from stealing from them or they're harmful or some reason. People don't kick people out of their house and wash their hands of them because they're sweet, innocent girls. And the state is trying to present her as this mentally handicapped young lady who's sweet and innocent and is somehow a victim, even though they allowed her to plead guilty to first-degree murder and kidnapping and rape. So don't let them base their entire case, which they have, on Rebecca Dishman and the fact that they're trying to tell you that she's incapable of lying. The fact that the DA just stood up here and said that Rebecca Dishman is incapable of lying should give you pause. That's a bold statement to make about their witness, isn't it? I mean, I've heard about bolstering witnesses, but my witness can't lie. Wow. So your first-degree murderer, rapist, kidnapper doesn't have the ability to lie. She can set up fake Facebook accounts, and she can carry on conversations and relationships outside of her normal relationship, but she doesn't have the ability to lie. So be careful. That's what I'm saying. The state is overplaying their hand a little bit here. And if they have to overplay, you have to ask yourself why. They've got a body in the freezer. They've got someone who is clearly tortured. I mean, there's no denying that this young lady is the victim here. But that's not what this trial has been about. We haven't really heard that much about Jennifer Paxton. We've mostly heard about how Rebecca Dishman is a victim. So let's talk more about what we know about her before she got Sean Finnegan. She moved around several different places, got kicked out of all of them. Needed a place to stay. Mostly it was with people she called fiancés, right? She's 22 years old. She has 4 or 5 fiancés. She uses the word fiancé because she moves in with every single one of them because they give her a place to live and they feed her. So she moves around a lot. What else do we know about her? She doesn't work. She stays at home. She thinks she called herself a stay-at-home girlfriend, right? So she's a stay-at-home girlfriend. All right. She's lazy. She doesn't want to do anything. She stays at home and she lets other people take care of her. That's her MO. That's what she does. And what makes people want to take care of people? If you're sweet and you're simple and you seem like you need help and somebody take care of you, what did all the witnesses say? She just seemed like someone who needed to be taken care of. That's how she presents herself. Because there's a lot of other things going on in the background, isn't there? There's all these other things happening. She's clearly able to lie and do all these other things, but she presents herself to these people in a certain way to accomplish what she needs. She's incredibly manipulative. And we know this because she's reaching out and sexual desires and life can be different. And so don't conflate the two. What else do we know about her? So she's into kinky sex, right? Before Sean. She told us that on direct. I'm sorry, on direct, maybe cross, I don't remember, but she told us that on the stand. We also know that because she showed up to Sean's house with her own sex toys and butt plugs. I don't know if you know what butt plugs are. I'm not a sex expert. I'm not Dr. Ruth or Dr. Joyce Brothers, and that probably shows my age that I'm using those as references. But I'm pretty sure butt plugs are something you stick in your butt. I'm just going to go out there. But she brought that stuff with her to his house. There's literally nothing about Sean having kinky relationships or anything outside of maybe a prostitute or somebody coming to his house until she shows up. There's nothing in evidence until she shows up. She shows up with those toys. If you look at that picture of her that looks like she's rolling around in feces or something that the DA keeps liking to show you, she took that picture. She took that picture and sent it to Sean. That's why it's on this phone. You can see it from the angle of the shot. So we keep talking about her being sweet and innocent and she can't lie. And what really comes down is who's in control. That's what this whole trial seems to be about, is who's kind of controlling this relationship. And the reason why it matters is because intent is an element. So to convict somebody of first-degree murders, convict somebody of kidnapping or aggravated kidnapping or any of those sort of crimes, you have to find that they intended that it happened that way. And so that's what we're going to dig a little bit deeper into as well. So what else do we know about Miss Dishman? Before she met before she met Sean, she's into Satanism. The state wants to gloss over that, but she comes in and says she's into Satanism and a Wiccan and all these other things. Her dad was a preacher. I understand that teenagers dabbling and all that kind of stuff, but we're dealing with a horrific murder here, with a body that is cut up and sliced, and there is a crucifix that's cut off of her arm. They can say it's sliced out or whatever. That's not. There may have been freezer burn on there, but they can't really. She didn't testify that that body was taken out of that freezer at that point. She didn't know any of that stuff, really. The body could have come in and out of that freezer a couple of times. We don't really know, okay? But we know that the biggest part that was sliced off of her arm is where the tattoo of the crucifix was. There's no other cut like that anywhere on her body. We know she was a cutter. There's tons of little cuts all over this body. So what they want to do is make this Sean's fantasy, right? Hookers are the easiest ones to kill. So this is Sean's fantasy. And I told you at the beginning that it's too easy. You know, who are they going to blame, right? Who are they going to blame? And so that's how you can see that he might be fearful that there's a body, or maybe he couldn't make the right decisions, and maybe he made terrible decisions. But the point is they're trying to switch roles, and I'm trying to switch roles, and that's what we seem to be arguing about here, is who was actually in control of this relationship. We've got Dishman. She moved around. She can't stay in a place, and she's constantly looking for the next place to go and who's going to take care of her. Okay? She's a Satanist. She has a history of kinky sex. She shows up with all her own kinky sex tools. They meet on Facebook. Have no idea what she said to him on Facebook. We know she was a CNA. We know he takes care of his 80-year-old mother who's in hospice care. Maybe she said, I could come live with you and help care and take care of your mother. I don't know. We don't have any of that stuff, do we? Have no idea what that conversation is. Okay, what else do we know about her? Before Sean. I think that's about it. I think that's about all we know about her. So what do we know about Sean before her? I'll put Finnegan up here. Sean lived in the same place for a couple of years. Same place, all right? Same place, same home. Sean worked a full-time job, more than a full-time job. And during the busy times of the year, every day he worked. That's the testimony. Okay, so he worked full-time. He worked at full-time. He took care of his 80-something-year-old mother who's in hospice care and ailing and dying. He's picking up her medicine. He's going to work from 5 in the afternoon till 5 o'clock in the morning, just about every day. That's 12 hours a day, not counting driving from Oak Ridge to Merchants. So 12 to 13 hours a day most days. He's not at that place. He's not at that apartment. But he's got a mother to take care of. So it seems reasonable that he might want a little help. If a girl is there and could stay there, that would be helpful. That would be a reason for her to be there. She's a CNA. But you heard from her that she had an up and down relationship with Miss Francis, and I'm not sure that she really did much of anything around that house, is what it kind of sounds like. But she had the freedom to leave, or stay, or help Miss Francis, or really, she had all the time in the world to do whatever she wanted to. Of the two people that are involved in this, only one of them had all the time in the world to do whatever they wanted to. And it wasn't Sean Finnegan. Sean Finnegan wasn't there. Sean Finnegan's a simple kind of dude. This is what we know. He has the same home. He takes care of his mother. He has the same job. He shows up. He's on time. He's reliable. He does a good job. He stays after work and hangs out. Seems like a normal guy. That's what the person that worked with him said, right? Didn't say anything negative about him necessarily. Something about having two girlfriends and laughing around and joking around, and he mentions a Jen. Well, Jen is not an uncommon name, first of all, so who knows who he was talking about, or if that was what he meant when he said it. I mean, they're trying to make you believe some off-the-cuff remark has something to do with this when it may have absolutely nothing to do with that at all. He was, let's say, he took care of his mom. That's an important thing. Took care of mom. He was a regular at Rent-A-Center. He was a good customer. He paid his bills on time. He was reliable. He showed up every Friday to pay his bills. That's from Rent-A-Center. He rented other stuff. It wasn't uncommon for him to rent things. Okay? So that's the stuff we know about Sean. So these are the two people that we have before they meet. We have Rebecca Dishman. She moved around, couldn't stay in a place. She's obviously burning every bridge. She's burning every bridge. She meets Sean on Facebook, moves in with him in a short amount of time, not to work, but to be taken care of, to be a stay-at-home girlfriend, and I have to assume help with his mother. I have to assume. I don't know, but I think that's kind of what she inferred, even though she said she kind of had an up and down relationship with her. But I would think for Sean it would be comforting to know that there was someone there with your 80-year-old mother who's sleeping at the top of a wooden staircase. It's just a thought, and you have to be away because you have to support everyone, which is what he was doing. So he housed her, he fed her, including several other people who probably stayed and maybe helped with his mother. But that's what we know about them. That's what we know about them from their witness, from the state's witnesses. That's what we know about these two people. And we're talking about character here, right? What do we know about from the neighbors? Okay, because they make a big deal. The neighbors choose Rebecca, right? Well, Sean lived there before Rebecca. The neighbors knew him before Rebecca was there. And what did they say? We never had a problem with Sean. They were friends. Nothing weird. Never had a problem. Good neighbor. Pre-Rebecca. Pre-Sean. All right. So they met on Facebook, right? It didn't take long before she moved in. And we talked earlier about how our natural tendency, I think, in power, looking at a power and control in a relationship, my natural tendency is to think, especially in most scenarios, that a man is in charge, especially if there's some kind of, I don't know, combative relationship or whatever. We usually think of the man as being bigger and stronger and in charge. Folks, look at the pictures. If you're just talking about the strength, because he brought up strength, that's the only reason I'm bringing this up. At the time, Sean probably weighed 150 pounds. I don't know. That might be in the record, so whatever. So did Rebecca, or maybe more. She was bigger than she was when she sat in here, and she had purple hair. She looked different than she came in here. So that's another thing you should ask yourself about too, is why would they dress her up like a teenager and sit her up in here with her hair and her glasses and stuff to make her look like she was simple? That's not what she looked like when she was arrested. So then let's jump forward to August 8th, 2020, because that's really where the story begins, right? And we've got this timeline down here. That's what I'm going to use. All right? Back here's November, December. This is 2019. All right? And then we got all the way over here, we got August 8th. I'll go 8-8. I mean, on her, none of this stuff. I mean, who could come and go as she pleases. If she just walked out the door and left, he'd never be able to find her. That's all she had to do. She didn't do any of that. She stayed for 8 months until just a couple of weeks before she left, and she started to set up her escape, didn't she? She goes over to the neighbor, who everything's fine with up to this point. Everything is fine with the neighbors up to this point, and she starts hinting to them, right? She starts hinting to them a couple of weeks before this that Sean's abusive, and she's simple. That's the way she presents herself to them. She's sweet and simple. She's sweet and simple, and she comes over and she borrows her phone and sexts her boyfriend, and then deletes the text so that the neighbor can't see what she's texting on there. Simple. She goes next door to the neighbor she's never spoken to, not friends with, any of that kind of stuff, right? Just to tell her that he's going to kill me, whatever. Can I borrow your phone so I can set up a fake Facebook account to contact my ex-fiance? Simple, right? They're saying that she can't process, so that's the stuff she comes up with. That's called manipulation. That's not called being simple. That's not simple or computation. That is complex computation. She is creating this scenario where she is the victim. She's the victim. She's always the victim. And the state bought it. And so their entire investigation is dependent upon what she told them happened. And that's what we're going to follow now, right? So August 5th, the neighbor decides to get her out of there, right? Today's the day. And I think maybe she let something slip to Mahogany that she didn't mean to. And that started the steamrolling. That's kind of what I think happened. And now she's stuck. And so she's got to go. Or maybe she's been setting up this whole time because she was ready to go. Maybe she had another boyfriend who's had open room. I mean, it could have been as simple as that. She had another place to go. Because on testimony, that's how she ended up with Sean. On testimony, she said, well, he convinced me to move in. And then on the very next line, she said, and I thought I was going to get kicked out of the last place. I thought I was going to get kicked out of the place I was in before. So she needed a place to go. And she found Sean. And she moved in. And his life changed. His life changed. Not hers. Okay, so we got her going to the police, and she starts to tell them the story. And the story is that she's the abuse victim. That's how it starts. She's on her way to a shelter because she's the abuse victim. I haven't seen any pictures of black eyes or bruises or strangle marks on her or any of that kind of stuff. So she's the least bruised up abuse victim I've ever seen in my life who was being threatened to kill. This is another manipulative move. She's controlling the situation. She's controlling the narrative. She knows that when she gets out of the house and she gets to the police, they treat her like a victim because that's what they're supposed to do. She's a female, she's young, she's coming in, she says she has an older boyfriend who abuses her. And we're taught to believe that because we're supposed to. But she was lying. But these officers don't know that. They're doing their job. And so they take her side. And even though she gives multiple stories, even in that first interview, and we talked about it on Cross, but even in that first interview, she talks about the body, about the whole thing is different. It happens at a different time of year. She's there for weeks, chained up to the bed. All this torturing is happening, all this stuff. She's making up all this stuff that changes over time as they go through the interview, but they still believe her because she has the inability to lie. Remember, she can't lie. And so she's still in control. She's guiding the investigation, and she knows something about that. She knows that there's a body at Sean's place because he helped cover up the murder she committed. She knows all the details. She knows all the details of the body. She knows all the details of everything on that woman, on Miss Paxton's body, her tattoos, number of kids, all these kind of things. You know why? Because she was there with her 12 to 13 hours a day by herself. The whole time, anytime, whenever she was there. She was the one who was with her. The ME told you that all those injuries, I think the DA asked her, how long would it take to accomplish this? Someone would have to spend a lot of time with them, right? Well, who spent a lot of time with her? Not Sean, he was working. He was working, or picking up his mom's medicine. Or, it's something we haven't talked about is I'm guessing that he probably slept on occasion too. So if he's working 12 or 13 hours a day and he sleeps only 5 or 6 hours a day, it doesn't leave a whole lot of time for him to be controlling Rebecca and setting up all this stuff for this murder that he had absolutely no reason to commit. No reason to commit. He's living his life. The only thing that changed about his life, he's already got girls that come over and have sex with him. That's what we learned, right? He's already got girls that will come over and have sex with him and help him take care of his mother. Even after Rebecca's there, girls come home with him and they have threesomes. And they happen and everybody moves on with their life. That's his life. That's what's going on. We may not agree with the lifestyle or whatever, but that's the lifestyle he was living. That didn't change until she entered the picture. Something that caught me from the DA during opening, or I think it was, but they said something like, this is a paraphrase, but Rebecca Dishman was with Sean Finnegan for only a few weeks, and suddenly then there was a dead girl in the apartment. So I'd like to say that now, because I think it sounds different when I say it versus when they say it. Sean Finnegan only knew Rebecca Dishman for 3 to 4 weeks, and suddenly there was a dead body in his apartment. The apartment he'd been living in with his mother for 2 years. She's what changed. She's what changed. So who's in control? The person that goes to work every day? How is he controlling her? That's what I don't understand. How is he controlling her? Well, he doesn't allow her to have a phone. You mean he doesn't pay for her phone? Because the last boyfriend let her other phone that was there, they couldn't start up, let the service go out because he got tired of paying for her phone. So he doesn't allow her to have a phone. They really are stretching to make this servant-master relationship. She sits at home all day doing nothing. He goes out and works and provides for him, his mother, her, maybe even a couple other girls that stop by every once in a while, right? It's easy to point It's easy to point the finger at the 50-year-old white dude over there. It looks kind of creepy, right? It's just really easy to point the finger at it, and she knew that. She knew it when she started, and she's the one who has the reason to do it, and has a history of jealousy and overreaction. And we heard about that too. Because what happened after she got arrested? She started a relationship with a corrections officer. And then she sat up here and said she didn't receive any benefits from it. I thought that was the most interesting thing I heard most of the trial. She received no benefits for her relationship with a corrections officer. Other than the time spent with the corrections officer and access to the phone, I suppose, which is also a felony, by the way. And then, to show that she's overreactive in a weird psychotic sort of way, when she finds out that maybe this correction officer is having some kind of flirtation or relationship with other inmates, she threatens to kill them. She admitted that, didn't she? She threatened to kill people because they were having a relationship, or whatever, perceived relationship, with a corrections officer that she perceived that she was having a relationship with. And her reaction was to threaten to kill them. And the state's position is, well, she didn't do anything about it. She's in jail. But that's what she does. Anyways, okay, so we're back to the 5th. She's setting this up. She's setting up her escape. She's telling a neighbor about some stuff that was just kind of silly and ridiculous. It doesn't even make any sense going over to this neighbor. And then the neighbor's testimony was kind of odd too. But it's about her right now, because that's what this case is about. And she starts feeding this stuff to Mahogany. And I think we get to the point that I think Mahogany and her husband are good people. I think they're good people, and they wanted to, they're just going about their business. And I think Mahogany was duped by her just like everybody else has been duped by her along the way. She's a sweet girl. We just thought she was innocent and sweet, and just didn't think that she thought like other people and stuff. And then you heard her whenever she found out what those texts were. When she actually got to read the text that Rebecca was sending on her phone before she deleted them, she was shocked by them, because that's not who she thought Rebecca was, because that's not who Rebecca showed her. And so when she goes to the police, they treat her like victims, which they're supposed to, and she plays that part. And then she starts feeding them details and strange details, right? So that we've got the fireball bucket. A lot of the stuff's in evidence, and it's going to be back there with it, and it's based on what she testifies to. It's all based on what she says. Every single thing comes from her. Every single thing. So let's go back. Let's go through our witnesses, okay? Let's go through our witnesses. We started out with 911. It's a call from Colt Pico. He's basically just regurgitating what his wife told him, right? I'm taking Rebecca. My wife called me. The neighbor says there's a body in the freezer. Anybody hears that, they're going to freak out, right? So of course he did the right thing, and he called 911, and that started that process. That's what the 911. We hear from the family of the actual victim in this case, Jennifer Paxton, who I feel like has kind of gotten lost in this whole thing, because all we were able to talk about is this girl the whole freaking time. But they don't offer anything to the guilt or innocence of this. That's just to show you who the victim is. And so I'll move on from that. Phyllis Tonkin came in. She talks about the missing person. And really all of that is just to show you that she was vulnerable. I mean, that's the point, is to show you that she was vulnerable. She's a prostitute. She's a drug addict. But she chose that life. And that's the part that we kind of get into, is that it was a dangerous life, but she had opportunities to get help and places to live. And she chose to not do that. She chose to be homeless and be a drug addict. And that's not to knock down, I'm not trying to attack a victim here at all. The point was that the point of that testimony was to show you that she would be an easy victim. But the truth is that testimony, what it shows is that's how they met. I mean, she's a prostitute, and he likes sex. And he's a kitchen guy and late nights, and she's a prostitute that hangs out around that bar, and they met. And it's a business contract, basically, right? It's the oldest profession, I think is what they call it. So again, whether we agree with it or not, that's the facts. That's the facts. And that's how they met. And so she agrees to go home with him, with her bags and stuff, because he's offered her a place to stay. Because he does that. He has a history of doing that. You can stay here. Maybe she'll help with his mom. I don't know. I mean, I have to speculate on some of this stuff, right? Sorry. Okay. So Phyllis Tonkin comes in and she talks about the missing persons report. And that was filed in February. And so it kind of gives you an idea of how lost this girl was, from her family. She's roaming around, and nobody really even knows when people are seeing her and stuff, but it takes several months before people realize she's missing. So that missing person doesn't come until February. Then we hear Rebecca Dishman's testimony, and she's kind of the meat of their whole case. She starts the investigation, and every single step of the investigation is an attempt to confirm what she told them. It's an attempt to confirm what she told them. There's very little attempts to disprove what she said. and every attempt is made to make the evidence fit the story she's telling. And it's kind of confusing. And so I'm still really kind of confused. I still have a lot of questions about when this happened. And we're going to get to that too, because we're going to figure out how they come up with their timeline. Because they created a timeline. And when they create a timeline and when they indict, they have to name the range of dates in which the crimes were committed. And that's part of something you're supposed to consider, is that they are saying that these crimes are committed during a certain range of dates. And they say that it happened before December 31st, 2019. That's the last date on their indictment. So if a kidnapping or a first-degree murder, or if a first-degree murder or a kidnapping happened, for you to convict, for you to find beyond a reasonable doubt that they met their burden and reached all their elements, I think you have to find beyond a reasonable doubt that anything that happened, murder or kidnapping-wise, happened before December 31st, 2019, or it's outside the scope of the dates that they've included in their indictment. That's what I'm talking about. This is an intellectual exercise versus an emotional exercise. Because if that's something that they haven't proven, then you have to have a reasonable doubt as to when the thing occurred. You have to. So let's figure out that. We'll get to that in just a minute. But just a brief of how they established their timeline is the freezer. And the freezer was delivered on the 28th of December. So now their timeline is not November through December 31st. It's December 28th is the delivery of the freezer, right? Rebecca Dishman's testimony was that the freezer was there already. That's what Rebecca said. Now, Sean, in his statement, there's like, I didn't know what to do. There was a body, and I got a freezer, and I put it in, or whatever. They're trying to make it sound like there was a body, and so he ordered the freezer to put the body in and stuff. But it's something that is in the middle of that interrogation when they're going after him, and so you need to take it for what it's worth. He pretty much sticks to his guns in that interrogation. Where they're thinking he's saying, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I mean, and they're coming after him. They're coming after him. I mean, they're just calling him a liar. They're doing all these things, and he's, look, you can call me a liar. I'm telling you I didn't do it. And he's admitting stuff that he knows he's going to get in trouble for, but he won't admit to those things. Someone did admit to those things, and she took the stand, and her name was Rebecca Dishman. She pled guilty to those things. The girl who can't lie. All right. The first thing she said when she took the stand, they asked something about, are you happy to be here? So I don't even know what they asked, but I heard what she said was, I've been waiting for this moment for 4 years. She's been waiting to grab control again for 4 long years. And she convinced them to go with what she said. And what did she get out of it? She got the rest of her life someone taking care of her. Exactly what she was looking for in the first place. The state of Tennessee now is going to house her and feed her. And she doesn't have to get a job. And she could probably have all the kinky sex she wants. I think she might have gotten exactly what she wanted out of this. And she comes in here, and who's in control? Now she gets to come in here, and she gets to play a part in deciding whether he lives or dies. Who's in control? Aunt and uncle kicked her out of the house. She said she moved because she was scared about getting kicked out. That's why she moved in with Sean. She talks about her jobs. She talks about punishments. I remember when they started talking about these punishments, and that was to set up this master-servant relationship, or the punishments. And she says that she got in trouble because she was texting her ex-fiance, and so she got in trouble with Sean, and the punishment was he made her have sex with him. Well, I don't even know what to make of that, honestly. Like, you have to read her texts. We haven't read them into the record for you, and we haven't stood here to read them because you should probably read them yourself. But read the text, please. I mean, they tell you a whole lot about how she functions sexually and controls the conversations. And just because someone is submissive in their tone doesn't mean they're not in control. Okay? Just because someone's submissive in their tone does not mean they're not in control when they use that to get what they want. And when you use your sexuality and your sweet to get whatever you want, you're still controlling. And just about everybody that she meets seems to think that. She's this simple, sweet girl who they just convicted of first-degree murder and kidnapping. So you spent 12 hours a day with Miss Paxton sometime in that house. Be careful. Be careful trusting the evidence, because we're going to look at where the source of all this evidence is. And I think what we're going to find is that ultimately the source is right here. Right here. That's the source. All right. So after Jennifer, and I'm sure, okay, she also is talking about she's screaming. She's talking about when Sean's beating her. And she said totally different stuff on the stand, by the way, than she said in any other statement. Sean's beating her with a bat, and she says that Jennifer Paxton is on the ground with, I think she called it a fireplace grate or something, and is protecting herself with the fireplace grate. And so as soon as she said that, I started thinking, well, I'd never heard that before. So we start looking through the pictures, and there's some pictures, and you can see them in there. There's not any real close-ups of it because I don't think anybody had ever heard that before, so they didn't actually take any pictures of it. But the fireplace has a screen over the front of it, and so I can assume that's probably what she's talking about. It doesn't look like it's been hit with a bat. That's all I'm saying. So I think that was just more falsification. She's just making up the story to go along. She also said, talking about, this was a really weird, awkward exchange, when she talks about him forcing her to climax over Jennifer Paxton after she'd been, I guess, assaulted or hit in the head or whatever. Forcing her to climax. I just didn't understand. I can't wrap my head around that. I can't wrap my head around it. I don't even know what she means by it. There is something wrong with her brain. The DA wants to make you think that she's simple or whatever, but that's not what's wrong with her brain. There's something deviant going on in there, and she's somehow been able to manipulate this entire process. Don't let her do it. Don't let her do it. All right. They were both smoking while this took place, evidently. Then she says that she stayed there because Sean went to work, so she stayed there and laid next to her on the bed and checked her pulse all night. Remember testifying about that? She laid there beside her all night to check her pulse to make sure she was still alive. Does anybody believe that? If so, that might be the sickest thing I've heard. So she's cool with just laying there beside her, and she is observing. She's observing. She's the one who's there with Miss Paxton. She's the one who causes all this stuff and is observing it. She's got the time to do it. She's the one who cuts. She's the Satanist. She's all of these things that he is not. Who's in control? Mahogany testified, well, Dishman first testifies that she goes over, talks about Mahogany saw bruises on my eyes and my glasses were broken. So that story's very consistent, right? A bruise on my eye and glasses are broken. And that kind of starts this thing. And I asked Mahogany, did you see it? Where'd you get that information? Rebecca Dishman. How does she know that Sean caused that? Rebecca Dishman. Okay, we heard from Kelly Coons. That's the neighbor who said she heard a noise, that it sounded like a fight that moved from the living room to the kitchen and then up the stairs and all this, and I did cross her a little bit hard because I'm trying to figure out what she actually heard, because that's not the stuff that she said in her statement. And I understand that people don't want to be involved, and maybe the first time you're interviewed you don't give all these details, but to then come in here 4 years later and give those type of details, to me it just seems a little bit like you might want to convict somebody, or you've been coached a little bit, or this is what you think you're supposed to say to help out the prosecution or whatever. I'm not claiming she's lying, I'm not claiming she's making stuff up, I'm just saying that's different than what she said before. And then if you think about what she actually said. She said she heard what sounded like a fight and a commotion. She didn't hear any screaming or anything. She didn't say anything about screaming or any of that kind of stuff. It sounded like a fight, commotion, and then headboard banging like rough sex upstairs in the bedroom, which of course would not be next to any of her walls. It would be above her roof. But I can see how you might still hear that down the wall. I'm not going to suggest that she wouldn't hear that. But those are a lot of details for something. Those are a lot of details for 4 years later. And the one detail that's left out is when. I mean, she says around Christmas is when she heard that. She remembered it was around Christmas. And the reason she knows it was around Christmas is because her tree was up. That's how she knows that day. And she also testified that she keeps her trees up for at least 2 weeks into January, sometimes the entire month of January. So now we have our timeline, don't we? We have the freezer delivered on the 28th. Sean wasn't there. We heard that from the Rent-A-Center guy, right? Because he was at work. So he wouldn't have been home till the 29th. So he could have come home, the earliest he could have come home to Jennifer Paxton is the 29th now, right? The earliest. Based on Dishman's statement, who we're supposed to believe because she can't lie, right? So now it's the 29th at the earliest, and it could go anywhere to the end of January, second week of January, third or fourth week of January, way outside, at least 2 or 3 weeks outside, past the date that they said that these crimes took place. That's an issue for them. It's an issue. And I'm certain that it feels like it's one of those technical things that people, you talk about, it's just something technical they get off. It's not, it's an element. It's something that they're supposed to prove. And when the state or the government makes an allegation against someone and charges them with the crime, we hold them to a higher standard because they're making serious allegations. And the people who make serious allegations like this are well trained in how to do it. And so when they don't cross their T's and they don't dot their I's, or they make a mistake on the date range, or they make a mistake on what they're charging, or they overcharge, or they do these different things, we have to call them on it. And we have to hold them responsible. That's how we make them better. That's how we make the system work. And that's why I say you have to let go of your emotions. In a case like this, it's really hard. I'm going to keep saying it because it's hard for us. I mean, attorneys go home and cry at night sometimes too. And sometimes we're cold about stuff, but it's the truth because we're in here doing this crap all the time. All right? So you've got to look at the facts. You've got to look at the facts. You've got to separate yourself out from the disgustingness of this. So she doesn't establish anything, right? Because she also didn't say she knew if Sean was even home when she heard that noise. So that could have been something completely different. It may not even be related to this, that noise she heard. If he wasn't there, it could have been Rebecca and his mom arguing and fighting. I mean, it could have been Rebecca and some other boyfriend there fighting. He's gone 12 or 13 hours a day. What the heck she do there? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if she has other relationships. I don't know. I know there's an unknown male on that body. That's weird. I'd like to know who that is. I'd like to know how it got there. Because that's supposed to be a body that was cleaned. I think she said bleached. And they spent a whole lot of time telling us how DNA degrades and how hard it is to find evidence. Which you know is a problem. Whenever the prosecutor's coming in and telling you that you should use your common sense, and which is really code for see it the way we see it, right? You should use your common sense to fill in the gaps, because finding evidence is hard. It's just really hard. That's not how this is supposed to work. It doesn't matter that it's hard. It doesn't matter if the scene is old. Those aren't, those are legitimate excuses of why evidence might not be there, but it doesn't absolve them of the responsibility of presenting you with evidence. And they're asking you, just forget that part, just use your common sense. There's a dead girl in a body, it has to be that creepy dude over there. That's what they say when they say use your common sense, okay? And what I'm telling you is that this is not a common case. These are not common people involved in here. And what I talked to you guys about was perspective. And I talked to you about perspective because I don't want you to use your common sense. The judge is going to tell you you shouldn't throw your common sense out the window, and that's true. But if you think that you can use your common sense to figure out what was going on in the head of these people, I'm going to tell you that that's probably not the right way to look at it. You have to, in some way, put yourself into that situation. You have to figure out intent. Who intended this to happen? Who had motive? Who needed this to happen? Who wanted this to happen? Who reacts? Who's jealous? Who's psychotic? Who has a history of not being able to maintain anything and burning bridges, even after they've been charged with crimes, can't stop. Even in jail, can't stop. It's not Sean Finnegan. It's Dishman. All right. So we talked to Colt Pico. He came in and he testified that Sean threatened to kill him. That's not what he said. You heard the conversation with him and the police officer, and that's not what he told the police officer. Sean came over and he told it. I'm sorry. Colt Pico told the police officer that Sean came over and said, "You ruined my life." That's a little different than "I'm going to kill you." But he came in here, and again, I'm not saying he's making stuff up or lying or whatever, but it's been 4 years, and he's a state's witness. So, what do you think his position is on this case? What do you think his position is on this case? I'm pretty sure he believes that he's guilty, so he's going to come in and do whatever he has to do for the state. I think it's subconscious kind of what we do in some ways, but I don't want to say that he came in and lied, because I don't believe that to be true. I think that they're good people. But that's not what he said. He said that Sean came over and said, "You ruined my life." He didn't threaten to kill him, but it sure sounds a lot better when he threatened to kill him, though. And he talked about her black eye and broken glasses, the one incident, right? The one incident they remember where they see her with bruises and stuff is a black eye and broken glasses, and that's what starts this whole thing. He remembers that, and I asked him, "How did you see it, or how did you figure that out?" Well, no, he was told by Mahogany, he was told by Dishman. Jennifer Miller came in from the Pint House. She filled in the gaps on who Sean Finnegan is, at least as an employee and as a worker. And that's someone who she would have seen quite often and worked with quite often, because he was always there. And if anybody's worked in restaurants or bars, I bartended for years. I know Mr. Wallace bartended for years. It's a late night. It's a different lifestyle. You work when everybody else is not working, and you're working when other people are eating. And so when it gets to be 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, when the bar shuts down at 3 o'clock, the employees hang out and have their shift drinks, and they might stay around for another hour or two. So him being there from 5 o'clock in the afternoon to wind down like everybody else does. If you get off at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe you do whatever you need to do to wind down. It's the same way with restaurant workers. It's just at a different time of day. So because of the time of day and the time of morning, there's different types of people involved too, right? In bars and stuff like that. So it is a completely different lifestyle. And if you've lived in that lifestyle, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't lived in that lifestyle, I'm hoping that I'm explaining it well enough that it's just a little bit different than a 9 to 5 type of job. It just is. And the folks that are involved in restaurant work are usually fairly free-spirited. You know, it's hard to be a server or bartender. You have to be willing to speak in front of people and get a little crazy on occasion, and so it's just the way it is. And so I just want to let you know that that's where he was living. So he's taking care of his mom, and he lives at the Pint House, right? He lives at home, and he lives at work, and he lives at home, and he lives at work. In between that, he's got to get his mom's medications and go to the doctor and do those other things. And he likes sex. And he's got a routine he does. He's got a simple routine. He goes every Friday and pays his thing. We all have the cousin or the friend in our life that they're not necessarily mentally handicapped. You know, they're not, I wouldn't say special needs or any of that kind of thing. I'm not trying to portray him in any way like the state is trying to portray Rebecca Dishman. I'm not trying to say that about him. But we all have that person in our life that is just kind of simple, just kind of straightforward and simple. And the actions that he's showing right here remind me of that person. And if you can have that kind of person in your life, how easy are they to manipulate? Then we heard from Lieutenant Robert Mansfield. He met with Dishman. The question I had was it was unprompted. She just started telling him these things about the body in the freezer. All this. He didn't ask us. She just started telling him these things. So who's controlling the narrative? Who's controlling the story? She's out of the house. Who's at the house with the body that she left there? Who's imprisoned here? Who can leave? Like I said, what was he supposed to do? If after that happened, the moment Rebecca hit her in the back of the head, or in the head with a bat, or whatever happened there, because I still don't know what happened there. I don't think you guys do either. We still don't know what happened, and that's what we're supposed to be determining, what happened. Most of this trial is about what happened after. Most of it, right? We've got all of the post-mortem injuries and all this kind of stuff in the body in the freezer, and all of the graphic things that we spent most of our week looking at are all things that have to do with what happened after the fact. And that's what I told you at the beginning of this trial that we were going to be doing. But what you're here to do is to determine what led up to that, and what happened, and when it happened, and who did it, and who intended for it to happen. Not who got trapped by it. And now they're presenting Rebecca Dishman as the person who's trapped, right? She's under his thumb. He controls her. She's the servant. She's the slut bitch whore, or whatever they had up here, right? And he's the master. Mufasa, whatever it is. I mean, they're going all out to paint him as this monster, because it's not hard to do when you have a mannequin filled up with all this stuff and these gross pictures of this body. I mean, it's not hard to paint him as a monster, is it? It's just not hard to do, because it was in his apartment and it was in his house. But he pled not guilty, and under interrogation said, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. He never came off of that. I didn't do it. And so the state wants, now that they're coming off a little bit and saying, even if you just find him guilty of the kidnapping, that's still felony murder and you can still kill him. That's really what they're saying, right? And so if you could just find him guilty of the kidnapping, and even in his statement, maybe that's a felony kidnapping, that's what they're saying, because he admits to chaining her back up. Well, go back and listen to his statement again, okay? Because you have to understand that everything that's said in an interrogation may or may not be absolutely true or correct, because it's a high pressure, high stress situation. And false confessions are not, they happen. False confessions do happen because people have a lot of trouble under pressure not admitting to some things. That's just true. These officers are very good at what they do. They're trained to interrogate people, and they're trained to get people to admit to things. And if you're a simple guy who's scared to death, admittedly scared to death, listen to it in that context. That's all I'm asking. Listen to it in that context, and then compare it to what she says. And then compare it to the facts. And see which one makes more sense. Because the thing that makes the most sense to me is, why would I kill her? Why would he kill her? I mean, they didn't present any motive, they just basically are saying, look at him, he must be a serial killer or something, right? I mean, they're basically just setting it up like she's the easiest type of person for him to kill, I think is what he said. Like he was out there looking for somebody. That's what they're trying to convince you that he was doing. And none of that comes from anywhere except right there. She provides all the facts. All the facts. She provides all the facts. So let's take her at her word that the freezer was delivered before he got home with Jennifer Paxton. And because I think she said it was there for a little while. I think is what her testimony was it was there for a little while. It was like an offhand comment or whatever. If it was there before, which by the way, he ordered it the week of Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's. Anybody ever have extra food the week between Christmas and New Year's? I mean, it's the holiday season and he works in a restaurant. The busiest time of year. There may be some extra food. He might have rented a freezer to put some food in. And the freezer's there. And she killed somebody and he had to do something. Maybe that happened. I don't know, because we don't know what happened. So not knowing what happened, they're asking you to convict him of all of these crimes, and then they're asking you to put him to death. Based on what Rebecca Dishman started and is trying to finish. Who's in control? All right. Larry Dowdle takes the stand. That's the officer that we heard the interview with Mr. Pico, and you hear him say he never had an issue with this man until today. That's a direct quote from the neighbor. Never had an issue with this man until today. Then we heard Brian Yook. I think I'm saying that right. He was just surveillance. He didn't really have a whole lot to offer. Margot Moore was called for service. They did some testing on dog chains and padlocks and all these different things, and there's no scientific evidence that links Sean Finnegan to ever touching Jennifer Paxton. None. Zero. But that chain was touched by Rebecca Dishman and Jennifer Paxton. And we have an unknown male. So what was going on while Sean was gone? Is she replacing whoever else was in there with the guy who owns the house, who then got stuck with trying to protect her? Because she's playing everybody. She's playing everybody, including the state, because they hitched their horse to her. They hitched their wagon to her. I mean, she's the horse, probably like one of the horses of the apocalypse, and then they hitched the wagon to her. And now they're trying to take that wagon and they're trying to stick it out in front of her because they don't think horses can push wagons. That's not the way it works. She started it. She started pulling the wagon. She started it. And she started the story. And then every single piece of evidence, every single witness that got up here that you heard from was them trying to support what she said. Trying their best to support what she said. Because she cannot lie. She's too simple. Right? Even though she said multiple things on the stand. They make the deal at the dog chain. There's two big dogs at that house. They're like two large dogs. There are leashes on the wall. There is a chain that's one of those chains with the spikes. It's like a choke chain, which is, if anybody here has a big dog and leashes, knows that that's what you use to train big dogs on leashes, because if they have any if they have any reason to chase a squirrel or something, they will pull you off your feet or out of your chair or any other thing if they're a large enough dog. And so those chains give you just a little bit more control over them. And they act like a sinise. Does anybody know? A sinise is like in the Da Vinci Code, where he wraps the thing around and he tightens it across his leg to give himself pain. They work kind of like that, but without cutting into the dog. And so they just kind of pinch in. If a human wore it, it would leave marks all the way around. But they had big dogs. There was a dog collar there. She knows what's in that house, and that's part of the problem, is that she's filling in these details, these little details that seem good, and so they start collecting all these evidence. And that's where I started to go a minute ago, and I got sidetracked. But the fireball bucket she talks about using for Jennifer Paxton to use the bathroom in, and so they collected the fireball bucket, and there's no evidence that that was actually used for that. But the person who's telling the story knew it was there. So it sure seems like it corroborates her story, right? And she knew the chains and the locks were there. And so it corroborates her story. And there's these little things, but they come from her. And then when they test those items, it doesn't support her story. They're just there. They're just there. But those are enough details to make it sound somewhat believable, because she knows what's in the house. She spends her whole life there. She stays there 24 hours a day. She knows what's there and where it is. We heard from Tatiana Cochran from the forensic. They checked for bodily fluids and other biological matter. We talked about the swabs. They checked the blood and all these kind of things. And the only blood and DNA they found from Sean Finnegan and whatever was on the inside closet door by the kitchen, which would be a natural place for there's tools and stuff in there, like somebody cut their hand or something, but it's nothing to do with any of this. It's on the inside door of the kitchen in his house. It's not odd, and it doesn't mean anything. But her DNA is on some of the material that she described as being involved with Jennifer Paxton. And how did she know that? Because she did it. Because she had the opportunity to do it. And she's the only one who had the opportunity and the time to do it. And she trapped him. She trapped him. Because what's he supposed to do? He knew he was going to get blamed. He brought a prostitute home to his house and she died. Who's going to get blamed? Plus, Rebecca could leave anytime she wanted to. She was free. She could have just disappeared, and she wouldn't have been involved in this at all. Probably would have never heard her story. Probably would have none of it. But she could have just walked right out the door. But she didn't do that. You know why? Because she had control over him, and he provided her a house, food, all of the things that she needed. And she didn't want to give that up until 7 or 8 months passed, and it's time to move on to the next guy. And then she starts her process. She starts her escape process. And she starts feeding people the story of what happened there. And it all came, that's the source. That's the source. We talked about garbage in, garbage out. If you're going to be analyzing and trying to synthesize facts, you have to look at what the source of the fact is. What's the source of the fact? Because if you're analyzing garbage, your result is garbage. Right? So let's think about where these facts come from. We're going to keep going. So far, I haven't seen anything that points to Sean Finnegan that didn't come from her mouth. So far, we've gotten this far through the trial. There's not a single thing that points to Sean Finnegan intending to kidnap anybody, intending to kill anybody. Nothing, except for what comes out of her mouth. Jennifer Millsaps testified that she tested the chain and the knives, that they also retested the knives. So they found Sean's chef's knives. We keep talking about chef's knives, like they're pointing to. My favorite thing is that the slice with the tattoo, the slice over here, is that when they say, well, it must have been a chef knife because it was a super sharp knife, like a chef's knife is some super fancy item. I mean, there are expensive chef's knives, but you probably have a sharp knife in your kitchen too. It's just a butcher knife. And if you sharpen your knives, they will be sharp also. A chef's knife, it might be a little bit better balanced. It might be maybe made from a little bit different material, but they're just knives, and you can sharpen them just like anybody can sharpen any other knife. So that's a red herring. And the reason why we know that is because they tested his knives, and there's not even any blood on it. And they didn't even, the knives were given, they didn't even take the knives when they first searched the place. They were in the cabinet in the house. We need to hold them to a little bit higher standard, guys. I mean, they're supposed to produce evidence for you. And instead, what they've come in and they've tried to do this shock and awe campaign. Gross pictures, body in the freezer, this guy needs to rot, he's a part of this whole thing, look how gross it is, this is disgusting, here's some gross sex stuff, she must be an idiot, right? And that's their case. And use your common sense, because finding evidence is hard. All right. They didn't test the padlocks. They didn't do any DNA on the padlocks. They didn't test any of that stuff. We don't have any of the Facebook communications that when they met or any of that kind of stuff, so we don't know what those conversations were. Let's see. John Hannon testified just kind of briefly about what was going on at the house. There wasn't a whole lot there. Danny Miller from Rent-A-Center testified, and he basically confirmed that Sean was a regular at Rent-A-Center. He regularly rented different things. He might have even rented freezers before. I don't know. We don't have any records of that, do we? That'd be helpful. It'd be good to know. But what he confirmed was responsible dude. Responsible guy. Normal. That's what he confirmed. Then we got to Dr. Malusnik. And we still call her Dr. Malusnik, but it's Malusnik Polchin. She did marry a long time ago, and we still call her Dr. Malusnik. But she testifies about the injuries. She has no idea what happened there. So her job is to come in and just try to explain what caused these different things. And she's a very smart lady. And she does a wonderful job of explaining those things. And there's no denying the injuries. I mean, clearly torture, right? And clearly a murder. No one's arguing any of those things. But the things that she couldn't say, and the things that are difficult to say because of the frozen body, for whatever reason, but she can't tell you how long body was before it was frozen, really. She could give sort of a decomposition, maybe 4 days even, 2 to 4 days, I think. Freezing the body stops that. She can't tell you if the body was taken in or out of and put back in the freezer however many times. So when they say that there's freezer burn and it's cut out here, whatever, they're suggesting that he quickly sliced her out of a freezer, did all that stuff, and got her under the bed and all that. That's where that cut came from, but there's no proof of that at all. That could have been any time during that 8 or 9 months, and she could have been put back in. I mean, it could have been any time. So that's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt that that's even when that happened. But they're trying to use that to kind of chef's knife all of those things about those injuries. But the person that was at home with the body in the freezer, I assume, observing it, maybe taking it out and looking at it, or making all those little cuts because she's a cutter and she's a Satanist and she's into this kind of stuff and she's a deviant and she clearly burns bridges and she reacts poorly to things and testified that she fought Sean, she hit back, she punched and stuff too. I mean, that's not an abuse victim. I've been around abuse victims. Abuse victims usually aren't fighters, generally. And so Dr. Malusnik-Polchin goes through the autopsy report, but she didn't perform the autopsy. So she's given an opinion, and she is an expert, and I will take her opinion on what those injuries are and all of those things, but she's not the one who performed the autopsy, and she really can't tell you anything about when it happened or who did it, or really how. I mean, she can say this was a sharp force or a blunt force, but the most that MEs can ever say is, well, that was maybe consistent with this or maybe consistent with that, and it usually means it's consistent with other things too. So the point of that is that great job, absolutely necessary to explain all the injuries and all of the torture and all of the things that happened to Miss Paxton, absolutely necessary, but did absolutely nothing to prove whether or not Sean Finnegan is guilty or not. It did nothing to do that, other than to allow them to say he's got chef knives, and so it would be hard to cut frozen skin and stuff, which that was the best thing she said, honestly. It was really hard to cut through frozen skin, but somebody did it, right? I mean, it was done. So it doesn't matter if it's hard or not, it was done. But she was saying that because they're trying to play this strength battle. It had to be a man with a sharp knife, because it's got to be a man with a sharp knife. Can't be the sweet girl who doesn't ever do anything and is too innocent to lie. All right. Then we heard Sean's statement. And he's scared. He doesn't hide it. He's scared. I didn't know what to do. I was scared. What was I supposed to do? And that's what he keeps asking. And he says, I'm scared. And then he admits some things. He helped her. He helped her cover it up. But who held control? What was he supposed to do? What do you think she would have done? Because when they're talking to him like he's scared, it's almost like he's scared he's going to get beat up or something. That's not what he's scared of. He's scared of going to jail for something he didn't do. He's scared of being blamed for something that is brutal. Because he opened his door to this girl. Before he opened his door to this girl, the inside of that house was his and his elderly mother's and his 2 dogs, who lived a regular life. And so they want to gloss over the Satanism, and they want to gloss over her prior, what she was before and what she was after. They want to gloss over her actions like she's the innocent. And that's a contradiction that I'm having trouble wrapping my head around. How can you let a mentally handicapped girl plead guilty of first-degree murder? They don't believe he's mentally handicapped. So that means they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes, I suppose. I don't know. I don't really think that. I don't think they're trying to pull the wool over. I think they believe her, and that bothers me more, because I think they believe her, and she's given absolutely zero reason to be believed. Zero. And if you don't believe her, you can't find him guilty, because she's the source of all their facts. She's the source of all of them, including who intended what, who did what. If he's opening up that freezer and masturbating to this body and all this kind of stuff, they didn't find any of his DNA anywhere near the freezer or the body or any of that kind of stuff. Hold on a second. I'll just walk over here for a second. Sean, can you stand up for a second? This criminal mastermind, sit down, please. That criminal mastermind right there. He could work a full-time job, he could take care of his mom, he could take care of his girlfriend, and he could take care of his dogs, and he could do all the things that he needed to do, and he can plan a murder, and he can pick up a hooker, and he can do all these things, and he can torture this girl for hours and hours and hours and hours, even though he's not there, and he can control Rebecca Dishman without having a leash, without having any chains, without having a GPS monitor, without having a cell phone to even call her on, without having any of those things, but somehow he's under control of her while he's working. That's what you have to believe. He's in control somehow. The only person who could not leave that house was in control somehow. Only one person is getting away with something here. And she took the stand. And if you believe any of the things that she said, then you're just being complicit with everybody else who believed all the things that she said. You can't let her control this from the start to the beginning. You can't. And you sure can't let the state kill somebody because she said so. Because that's where we are. That's where we are. I don't think that I asked you guys to do anything other than your job. I think that's all I asked. That's all I'm asking now. And so it's about understanding what your job is. And your job is to make them do their job. Not to use your common sense to fill in the gaps of where they didn't do their job or where they weren't able to do their job. Because that's the other thing, is the way the system works is not because the police are bad or they can't, or they did a terrible job or something. Sometimes there's just not any evidence, and that's just part of the truth. So this is in no way an attack on police or any other thing, but there are certain issues with this investigation. And there's definitely some stuff I wish I had. It would tell me a whole lot of stuff. There's definitely some things that I wish were tested in that house that would tell me an awful lot of stuff. But because they were following the path laid out by Rebecca Dishman, some of the stuff got brushed away because he became the suspect on August 5th. He became the only suspect. She got charged, but she led the investigation first. And he's the one they want. And you heard them stand up and say, look, I'm the public prosecutor, and so I have to make these decisions, right? And he has to make, and he's right. He's the public prosecutor. He's got to make these decisions. And they chose poorly because they got duped. Just like she's doing with every single level, every single step. She's still trying to grab control. She's writing him for months after they're in jail, professing her love and take me back and apologizing for lying. It's a strange thing to write to somebody, isn't it? When you're both charged with first-degree murder. I'm sorry for lying. Please take me back. She's still grasping at it. At the same time, writing Ramsey's. Where was Ramsey's? Who is Ramsey's? She's communicating with Ramsey secretly on this Facebook thing. She's setting up fake Facebook things. She's at home by herself 12 or 13 hours a day. All this kind of stuff. Who's Ramsey's? Was he there? There's an unknown male. Did we test any DNA against that fella? I'm just curious. Because it sure seems like maybe somebody else was involved. I don't know. You don't either. And that's the problem. And here we are. So we've been here for a week, and we've seen a lot of disgusting stuff. And the state is going to ask you to find him guilty of all of these intentional crimes. And that's the key word, is intent. Did he intend to bring a hooker to his house for the purposes of kidnapping and killing her? Or did he intend to bring a hooker to his house for the same purpose that he had previously brought hookers to his house, for a threesome with his girlfriend that she requested? Read the text. And then something happened in that house and he couldn't get out. Talk about trying to calculate or having processing problems. What if you came down out of the shower and your girlfriend had just knocked somebody over the head with a bat? And it was a hooker that you brought home. Process that one. Process it. What do? When you're a 50-year-old man, she's a 22-year-old. What do? Somebody had trouble processing. It wasn't her. She processes just fine. And she saved her own life, didn't she? She sure did. By coming in here and trying to kill him. She's pretty good at it. You may not like it, but you got to find him not guilty on those intentional crimes. Find him guilty of what he admitted to. But he didn't intend on anybody dying, and he sure didn't intend on kidnapping anybody. He got stuck. He got trapped by the same girl who then trapped the police and the state prosecutor into having to put her on the stand to make their case. Because if they didn't put her on the stand, you wouldn't have any evidence, would you? Except a body in a freezer. You don't have a choice. You have to find him not guilty on the intentional crimes. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Anything that says rape, no proof of rape. He's charged with multiple counts of rape. That's straight from her. That's straight from her. That's her testimony, right? That he raped her or he raped Jennifer Paxton and all that. I didn't hear any evidence of rape, but he's charged with multiple counts of rape. And if there is, it came from her mouth, and that's it, because his DNA is not on anything. Semen's not on anything. No body hairs on anything. Nothing. There's just no evidence. It all comes from her. So at the end, you're going to go back and deliberate, and hopefully not chastise me too much for bringing you guys down here at the end. But you got to do your job. I mean, and it's a hard job, and you have to separate your emotion. And it's the most difficult thing in the world, and I know I'm asking you to do almost the impossible. But I'm asking you to do it, because I'm telling you that it's what your duty is. We all have a duty. We all took oaths, and we came in here to do justice, and we came in here to do justice under the rules, and according to the rules, and those rules are in place for a reason. And even if it makes your stomach turn to think about it, sometimes we still have to live by those rules, because those rules apply beyond this case. Do your job. They didn't prove it. They just didn't. There's just not any evidence, except for Rebecca Dishman. You got to find him not guilty. Thank you.